Welcome to our asynchronous training on launching eSpark. This training is great for teachers who are just getting started using eSpark for the first time and for teachers who have some experience already but could use a refresher. My name is Jess and I lead our PD team at eSpark. I'm excited to facilitate today's training for you. If you have any questions for us, please use the blue chat in the bottom right corner of your eSpark teacher dashboard to reach out to our support team. By the way, stick around to the end of our training today to complete our post survey and receive a certificate of completion. There are three main objectives for today's training. First, we'll review what eSpark is and how it can help your students. Second, we'll review the steps to get your class started. And finally, we'll review how you can use eSpark and track progress. We'll also be sure to highlight eSpark's newest features so you feel confident in getting the most out of eSpark. So let's dive right into our first objective, reviewing what eSpark is and how it can help your students. So what is eSpark? First, you should know that eSpark is designed for today's kids who are just built differently. We've heard from educators all over the country that engaging students and helping them grow academically is more challenging than ever. So eSpark needs to be built differently too. eSpark engages today's learners through highly personalized and highly relevant learning. And for those of you that have used eSpark before, you should know that eSpark is actively updating our activities to fit in with today's learning environment and maximize student engagement and growth. And I'm excited to showcase some of those updates for you today. So let's get more specific. eSpark is a supplemental learning program you can use to differentiate instruction and practice for math, reading, and writing across standards from pre-K to 8th grade. Instead of cookie-cutter repetitive activities, eSpark personalizes learning in real time. And there's three main ways that we do that. First, eSpark has personalized sequencing of lessons, adapting each student's learning path based on the level they're working with. Next, it personalizes the learning content so that the lessons are unique to every student, featuring topics tailored to their interests and choices. For example, a student might choose to read a story about Mr. Beast or solve a math problem about cats. And finally, eSpark provides personalized remediation for students in real time, celebrating them for correct responses and providing hints to guide them in the right direction when needed. eSpark's student-centered approach is also evidence-based and AI-powered. Finally, let's take a closer look at some options for how you can implement eSpark in class. To start, we recommend that students use eSpark for about 1 hour for reading and writing and another hour for math. So about 2 hours total spread out across the week. This could be in 15 to 30-minute sessions, about 2 to 5 days a week. And of course, this can vary depending on your grade level and routines. For example, students in second grade below often use eSpark for about 15 minutes at a time every day or even multiple times a day, like once during math block and again during reading block. Students in third grade and above can use eSpark for longer periods of time, about 20 to 30 minutes, and that could just be a couple days a week. But what you're aiming for with all students is consistency. That's where we have seen the most growth with students on eSpark. There's a lot of options for how your students can use eSpark in class. It's a really great option for small group centers and interventions because students can work on targeted skills independently. It's also a really great option to support your core curriculum. We'll be talking later about how you can assign specific lessons to the whole class. And this is a really great option to provide them with extra practice on a skill. Let's say you're going over fractions or multiplication in class. You can give a quick extra practice or even do an assessment on how students are performing on that skill. And then, of course, it's also a great option for any sort of independent work time throughout the day. If you're ever giving students a choice for what to work on, it will probably be a very popular choice. And it's also a great option for students to use as a supplemental resource at home. We do have a parent letter that you can send home to families that will set them up for success with using eSpark at home. So that is all you need to know about what eSpark is and how it can help your students and what that can look like in class. We're going to pivot now to talking about how you can actually get your class set up. So we'll talk about all the steps that you need to know to get your class started. When it's your first day on eSpark, there are just a couple of quick and easy steps that you can take to get your students all ready to go. The first thing that you'll need to do is sign up or sign in to your teacher account. And you can do that by going to esparkteacher.com. You can sign in the way you usually do if you've used eSpark before. If it's your first time, you'll want to choose one of our main learning options, which will be Google or Clever or manual rostering with your teacher email. If it's your first time, we'll also ask you a couple of questions like what grades do you teach and where do you teach? There are a couple of ways that you can change this later that we'll talk about soon. You'll know that you have successfully signed into your eSpark account when you arrive in your teacher dashboard. So let's take a look at what you can expect. The teacher dashboard has a blue bar at the top, and eSpark will automatically take you to your home tab when you first get signed in. So feel free to pause the training here and actually sign up for your account and make it to your teacher dashboard. We're going to talk next about how you can add your students. So once you've signed up for your eSpark account, you'll want to add your students to your class. The way to do that is to find this big green button on your home tab that says Add Students. You'll just want to scroll down to the bottom and find where it says Get Started and press that Add Students button. Once you do that, there will be a window that pops up that gives you a couple of options. You can import your Google Classroom data, you can share a join code that your students can type in to be added to your class, you can connect your Clever account, or if you don't use Google or Clever, you can roster manually and you'll be able to type in students' first and last names as well as create a username and password for them. So all of these are very quick and easy options that will get your students added to your class. There's another way that you can add students to your class by going to your class roster, which we'll talk about soon. So there's a couple of settings that you should be aware of to adjust the settings in your class throughout the year. So I'm going to point out where you can find both of these. First, we'll talk about where you can go to customize eSpark. In your dashboard, in the upper right corner is where you can find these settings. When you click where it says Customize eSpark, this will take you to the customizing page where you can always edit your grade levels or your school, and we'll also talk about your student video settings a little bit later. The next option to be aware of is the class roster I mentioned. So in the upper right corner from that settings, just click where it says Class Roster. This is another place where you can add your students or create a new class if you need to add another class, and you can adjust various settings for your class. One thing we recommend looking at is the grade column. You'll want to double check that all of your students are rostered at their actual grade level, not necessarily the grade level you expect them to be working at, but their grade level that they're actually rostered at. You can also adjust audio settings for each student. It's going to say auto. For second grade and below, that means that audio support is turned on. And for third grade and above, that means audio support is turned off. So if you want to have your students have the questions, the answers, all the texts read aloud to them, you'll want to make sure that that's turned on. And you can press the edit button here to make any necessary changes there, as well as to students' names, usernames and passwords, etc. The other setting to be aware of here is under class options, you can manage your co-teachers. If you need to add a co-teacher to your class, just type in their email and that will send them an invitation. That will give them all the same access to the class that you have so they can see all of your students and their data and they'll be able to give them assignments. Okay, so now you know about the various settings that you can use to customize your class. The last thing you need to know to get started is how your students sign in to begin. It's very easy for students, and this will depend on how you've rostered them. For Clever, all your students need to do is go to Clever, go to your teacher page, and then click on the eSpark app. That will help them get signed in automatically. If you're using Google or manual rostering, your students will go to eSpark.app in their web browser and they can press the sign in with Google button or they can type in their username and password. There is also an option to scan a QR code. In your class roster tab, there's a button that says login instructions, and this will include personalized login instructions for your class. For you that are using the manual option, you can press the print login cards, and this will show the usernames and passwords for each student, as well as the QR code that they can scan. And that's all you need to know to get set up with eSpark this year. Set up your account, add your students, make any customizations that you need, and then have your students sign in to begin. Feel free to pause the training here to go through those steps so that you're ready to get started. Now you know what eSpark is and how you can get started for the year. We're going to wrap up with our final objective where we'll review how you can use eSpark and track progress. And this is where we'll spend the majority of the time in our training. To start, let's review the two main learning options in eSpark. We have a student-led learning option called the Adaptive Learning Path, and we have a teacher-led learning option called Assignments. I'm going to switch over into a student dashboard so that you can see how user-friendly this is for students. So now I'm in a student dashboard. At the top, it says from my teacher. Any assignments that you give your class will show up at the top here. On the left in blue will be reading and writing assignments, and on the right in purple will be math assignments. They can always press show more if you've assigned them more than one for each subject. Beneath that, they'll see my quests. This is the adaptive learning path, and students just choose reading or math, and then they'll be working on skills at their own level and pace. If you have not given any assignments to your class, this will be right at the top for them, so it's very easy for them to find. But typically, we prioritize assignments from you by putting those right at the top. So as you can see, it's very user-friendly for your students. We're going to talk in more detail about the adaptive learning path first. This is the no prep option. So this is where most classes get started on eSpark. And this is also the option that you can actually sync your STAR or NWEA data to if you want to really target your students with the skills they need the most support on. As you saw in the student dashboard, the adaptive learning path is known as quests for students. Quest is student-friendly language for standard. So one quest typically covers one standard, and they're aligned to standards from pre-K all the way to 8th grade. A quest takes about an hour on average to complete, so we don't expect students to complete that in one sitting. It will always pick up where they left off the next time they get signed in. The first time that students work on reading or math in their quests, if they're in 1st to 5th grade, they will automatically be given a placement quiz, which will determine a starting point for them. Other grade levels will start right at grade level and then will adapt based on how they're performing, which we do for all students. And as a reminder, your admin can share your STAR or MAP assessment data with us, and that will give students a really specific starting point so that they're working on the skills they need the most support with, especially those that they've scored below grade level on. So that's at a high level what the adaptive learning path is, but let's take a closer look at a quest and the activities that are typically involved. So every quest will start with a pre-quiz, and this will test students' prior knowledge on the skill. Then there will be an instructional video that explicitly teaches the skill. From there, they spend the majority of the time doing practice games and activities that will all be focused on practicing that skill. There will also be interactive questions throughout that will check for understanding and provide feedback along the way. And at the end, there will be a post-quiz, which is students' opportunity to demonstrate growth. They're going to be aiming for a score of 80% or higher to demonstrate mastery on that skill. And when they do that, they earn a high five celebration from our character, Rocky. So students are aiming to earn high fives on eSpark. If they don't get a high five, meaning they score below 80%, they will still get a fist bump celebration so that they know they reached the end of their quest. And this is where the adaptive learning path adapts for students. If they consistently earn high fives, we'll challenge them with higher grade level skills. If they consistently struggle, we'll meet them where they're at with lower grade level skills. So those are the activities that are typically involved in a quest. There is also one optional activity, a creative challenge, our student video recording feature. This is where when students earn a high five at the end of their quest, they can unlock the ability to record a video showing what they know. eSpark will give them a prompt that will help them synthesize their learning, and it's a really great formative assessment where teachers can then provide feedback on the videos and see how students are performing. This is an optional feature. As a reminder, in your teacher dashboard from those settings at the top, if you go to that Customize eSpark page, you'll see the option to turn student video recording on or off. So that's a setting that affects the whole class. But remember, they have to earn that high five to unlock that video recording feature. We also have tons of resources you can use to support student video recordings. In your support feature in the bottom right corner, if you search for student video recordings, you'll see tons of helpful resources here, including example videos you can show your class, an instructional video you can show them, and scripts they can use to plan what they're going to say. So I definitely encourage you to try that feature out this year. So that is at a high level the experience of a quest. Next, I'm excited to showcase for you an example of one of these personalized activities that students will see in their eSpark experience. So we're going to take a look at a sample of the student experience now by looking at an activity called choice texts. This is one type of activity that students will see. It is a reading activity, but I will let you know there's a math version of this activity as well. And what's really special about this experience in eSpark is that your students get to make choices that make it so that the experience is unique to each of them. So let's do a quick demonstration of how it works. When you start the choice text activity, your students will be having a conversation with our character Rocky. Now, as they're making choices, the types of choices they make will depend on the standard they're working on. Right now, I'm doing a reading literature standard on character point of view, so we're going to be creating a story. But students could also create an informational text like an article or a decodable reader, depending on the standard they're working on. You'll also notice that I have a text box here and I can type in my own responses as I'm making choices. Your students will only have the text box if they are in third grade or above. Below that, students in second grade and below will just see these options that they can choose from, so it's more user friendly for them. And of course, when we're typing in, this is all moderated to make sure that it's school appropriate. So, as we're creating a story here, the first choice I get to make is to describe the main character in my story. I'm going to make my main character a golden retriever because I have a golden retriever and I think it would be fun to read a story about my dog. Next, I get to name my character, and my dog's name is Marvel, so we're going to name our character Marvel as well. Next, I'll get to choose a character trait. We're going to go with funny.
Funny.
And finally, I get to choose the setting of my story, and we're going to go with the beach. Now, once I'm done reading, this is where eSpark will generate a story for me based on my responses. Here we have Marvel's Beach Day Adventure. And my favorite part of this experience is the image that gets generated to go along with the text. This really brings Marvel to life. And this is what makes the experience so exciting for students because they can see their choices come to life as well. There are a couple of really cool accessibility features here as well. In the upper left corner, we have the speaker button for all students so they can have the story read aloud to them. There's also a make easier button. So if they're struggling to read the text on their own, they can press this one time to rewrite the story one grade level below. So the goal is for students to always be able to work independently on eSpark and have it be really accessible to them. I'll just read you a quick snapshot of my choice text. For Marvel's Beach Day Adventure, it says, Marvel the Golden Retriever loved the beach. He was a funny dog, always making everyone laugh. He lived with his best friend, Lucy, a cheerful girl with bright red hair. So that's the start of a really exciting story. Now, when we're done reading our text, we'll press done reading, and this is where students will start to practice their skill. So eSpark will open up a split screen for them and start to ask them comprehension questions. First, we're always going to ask for their
Great.
feedback on the text. That way they can let us know if they liked it, and we can always improve the activity for students. And then we're going to start to answer comprehension questions based on the skill, in this case, character point of view. Now, when students choose their answer, Rocky is going to give them feedback. So in this case, I got the answer wrong, and Rocky said, that's not the right answer, but don't sweat it. Let's give it another shot. And what's really cool is Rocky's giving us a hint based on the text. So this is where students are getting that live remediation from Rocky based on how they're performing. So this is a very special experience. And I do want to mention that there is a math version of this activity as well. To highlight some things that are brand new with choice texts, we have hundreds of new choice texts always coming to eSpark. For example, there's themed choice texts like Back to School or March Madness or Black History Month. You can always search for specific themes in your assignments feature that you'd like to assign to your class based on the time of year, and we'll be reviewing that assignments feature next. There's also different genres available like mystery, poetry, fantasy, drama. And for informational text, we're always adding new topics to keep things relevant for students. So recently we've added Taylor Swift and Caitlin Clark. So always new types of choice text coming to really keep your students engaged. On my screen now, I have a summary of the adaptive learning path, which is that student-led learning option we just reviewed. And we also talked about choice text as an example of a type of activity that students see in their adaptive learning path. But I mentioned that that's an activity that can also be used with our assignments feature, which we'll be talking about next. So you can pause here if you'd like to review that quick summary of the adaptive learning path. But next, we'll be talking about the assignments feature. So let's talk about how you can assign short lessons to your whole class, small groups, or individual students. With our assignments feature, you'll have access to a library of skills that you can assign, and you'll be able to search for specific skills using keywords. Let's do a quick demonstration. In your teacher dashboard, from that blue bar at the top, you'll just navigate to the Assignments tab, and this will take you to that library of skills that you can search for. We do have filters on the right-hand side, so you can adjust the grade level, the subject, the state standard, and then you can search for various keywords. So for example, you could search for choice text as a type of activity, or here I have choice math, which is the math version of that activity. You could also search for specific keywords or standard codes. So for example, I'm going to type in multiply. From there, you can click into a specific assignment to preview that assignment and make sure that you like it. So I just clicked into multiply by 9, and I'll be able to preview this entire assignment. At the top, you can read the standard that's associated with this assignment, and then you can see that it's made of 3 parts, and I can preview all 3 parts. We have an instructional video that you can watch, a practice activity, and a post quiz at the end. You can see that there's time estimates here. On average, these assignments take about 15 minutes for students to complete, so this is just going to be an estimate that we see on average for each student. Once you've previewed the assignment and you're ready to assign it, the Assign button will be in the upper right corner. You will select your class, and then you can schedule the activity in advance, or you can assign it to students immediately to make it show up right away on their student dashboards. You can also edit your students to decide who's going to receive this assignment. So it could be the whole class, or you can unselect this box at the top to select a specific student or a group of students that could possibly use an intervention or extra practice on this skill. So you can always decide who is going to receive the assignment. Another great feature of assignments is at the bottom of most of these assignments, you will see options to differentiate. So this can really save you some time with small group planning or just differentiating for students working at different levels. You'll see typically an assignment that's below grade level, an assignment that's above grade level, and you can just click into those and follow the same steps to preview and assign. So that is how you check out specific assignments and then assign them to your students. From your Assignments tab, there's also a button that says My Assignments, and this is where you can keep track of the data for the assignments you've already given to your class. So you can see the assignments that are currently in progress, the ones that have already been completed will be at the bottom, and then you can see a summary of data. If you click into a specific assignment, you'll be able to end the assignment, which will take it away from students. You can see when it was scheduled for, how many students completed it, and the average score. You can also see commonly missed questions, which can be helpful for reteaching. You can also see live student progress. There is a refresh button here. So if your whole class is working on this at the same time, you could watch as they progress through the 3 parts of the assignment. You can also see their score, and you can click on the score to see the questions that students had and how they responded to those questions. So that is an overview for you of our assignments feature. Now, again, we have a chart here that's very helpful to summarize the difference between the adaptive learning path and assignments. So feel free to pause the video here to make sure that you understand the difference between these 2 main learning options. Next, I'm going to share some examples of types of assignments and activities that you can be on the lookout for. So here I have a couple of key types of activities that you can assign using the assignments feature. We've already talked about choice text and choice math, which is a really fun example of a personalized activity that you can assign to your students. I also want to highlight 2 other types of activities for you that are newer on eSpark. eSpark Writing, which is a new subject where you can have basic writing instruction for your students, currently available for 2nd to 5th grade standards. And then also Reading Lab, which is a phonics and fluency activity currently available for kindergarten to 3rd grade, and that we're constantly adding new activities for. So let's take a look at both of these activities real quick so that you can see how they work. And of course, you'll be able to find these in that assignments feature to assign them to your class if you'd like. So we'll start with eSpark Writing. With eSpark Writing, we have a brand new character named Willow. So meet Willow, our writing tutor. As we get started with the writing activity, the first thing we'll do is choose what we want to write about. And we have various topics here. Now, these topics, I've actually already shown interest in these previously on eSpark because these are informational choice texts that I've previously helped create. So every student will see different options here that will be tailored to their interests. I'm going to choose an article about rock climbing. So again, this is the choice text that I previously created. It's called Rock Climbing, Bouldering versus Rope Climbing. On the left-hand side, Willow is giving me a chance to choose a specific prompt that I'd like to respond to for this article. Now, I can always reread it to find some extra details here, but let's look at our options. We could describe the equipment needed for bouldering and why it's important. We could explain how bouldering and rope climbing test your strength and balance, or we could compare the safety features of bouldering with those of rope climbing. I'm going to go with the third option. Now that I've selected my prompt, on the right-hand side, Willow's going to open up my writing space for me. So this will be my text editor. At the top, I'll have a reminder of my prompt so I can always remember what I'm writing about. And what's really cool is eSpark has started me with a sentence starter. In rock climbing, being safe is crucial because, and Willow's giving me some instruction on the left-hand side to help me get started by introducing my paragraph. What's really cool is in the upper left-hand corner, we see the image from our text. And if we click on that button, it's going to open up the text for us again, so we can refer back to the text for those key details that we're referring to when we're writing. Students do not have the ability to copy and paste from here. It prevents them from doing that, but it's a really great way for them to find those extra details. So let's submit a sentence to Willow and see how it goes. In rock climbing, being safe is crucial because climbers are doing a very risky sport that needs safety equipment. So that's just an example of a sentence. I'm going to press this green check mark here to submit that to Willow and see what Willow has to say. And what's really special about this activity is that live remediation and support that students are getting from Willow. So in this case, Willow said, "Good start. I like how you explained why safety is a top priority in rock climbing." And now Willow's going to suggest where I can go next. Now we can add a sentence comparing the safety equipment in bouldering compared to rope climbing. Let's give an example of what would happen if students maybe got a little bit off task. So in this case, I'm going to write, "I don't want to write." And we're going to submit that to Willow to see how Willow responds. And again, what's really special here is how specific Willow is with the responses based on what students are saying. So in this case, Willow said, "It sounds like you're feeling a bit frustrated, and that's okay. Writing can be tough sometimes, but you're doing a great job so far. Let's take it one step at a time." And now Willow's giving us another suggestion and even sentence starters as needed based on how students are performing. So this is a really special activity that's just a quick demonstration for you with informative writing. We're also going to have opinion writing on eSpark as well as narrative writing. So these are keywords that you can search for in your assignments feature. Let's take a look at how you can do that. In your teacher dashboard, from that assignments tab, where you can find assignments, you'll want to switch over to reading as the subject. That's where we can currently find writing activities. And if you search for the keyword writing, you will see the various writing activities that we have. And there's various for each grade level. Okay, so that is eSpark Writing, another example of a type of activity you can search for. And finally, I'd also love to showcase the Reading Lab for you. Reading Lab is our phonics and fluency practice for students that's brand new and uses speech recognition for the first time in eSpark. So let's take a look at Reading Lab. Just like with eSpark Writing, we have a brand new character associated with Reading Lab. This is Fennec. You can see Fennec has really big ears because Fennec is ready to listen to your students and help them practice pronouncing specific words.
Let's practice reading words with the CH digraph that makes the ch sound.
Okay, so we're going to be practicing the ch sound.
Can you read this word to me? Go ahead, I'm listening.
Chug. Okay, so in that instance, I pronounced the word correctly. So let's see how Fennec responds.
Great job.
Okay, so we got a great job. We have an image to go along with our word, and it's going to mark it correct for us in the upper left-hand corner. Now you'll see that there are 5 words total that we're practicing. Let's take a look at what happens if I pronounce a word incorrectly.
Can you read this word to me? Go ahead, I'm listening.
Choop. Okay, so let's see how Fennec responds.
Watch as I tap each dot and say each sound in the word. Ch, ah, t. Now I'll blend the sounds to make chat. Now it's your turn. Tap each dot and say the sound.
Ch, ah, t,
Now blend the sounds.
chat. Okay, so what you just saw is what we're calling a micro intervention. What Fennec did was break the word down at the phoneme level and model for us how to practice each sound in the word and then blending them together. And then we had that gradual release of responsibility to students where they got to try it themselves. And that is where we can get the word correct. And this word will also be marked correct for us because in the end, we got it right.
Great job.
Now, if we did get the word wrong, we would get a red X up at the top. So it was really clear that we still need some extra practice on that word. And what's really cool about this activity is that teachers, you will be able to see the performance of your students on each of the words. And you can even listen to the recording of how they pronounce the words. So you can identify how they're doing. In your assignments feature, you'll be able to find this by searching for Reading Lab. You can, of course, also search for the specific phonics skill that you're working on. And then in the assignment, when you're tracking the data, all you have to do is click into the specific assignment to see the data from your students. So here we have one of these Reading Lab activities. And if I click into the score, I can see all of the words and I can even play back the word.
Chop.
Also, when 5 or more of your students complete this activity, we're going to send you a really helpful email that summarizes the data for you. So you don't even need to check your dashboard. Okay, so those are examples of newer features on eSpark and specific activities that you can assign using your assignments feature to be really strategic about the types of skills that you're giving your class. This is where I would encourage you to pause the training and explore the assignments feature for yourself. You can search for keywords like choice text, choice math, writing, or reading lab, and I recommend that you pause for about 5 minutes to explore. When you're done, we're going to wrap up our training by reminding you about some of the key data and progress monitoring tools in eSpark. All right, so let's wrap up by talking through the data reports and tools on eSpark. There's two different types of tools to be aware of with eSpark. There's data reports built into your dashboard, and there's weekly emails that we send to you that can save you some time by sharing some data trends with you. We'll start by talking through the 3 data reports. The first report to be aware of is the activity report. This is the report that allows you to track your students' daily engagement on eSpark. So you can see what grade level they're working at, what skills they're working on, and how they're performing. You can see an estimated active learning time on eSpark. So it's a really great way to see what your students are doing, and it's a great accountability tool as well. In your teacher dashboard, what you're searching for is the activity tab at the top. If you don't see your activity tab right now, you will see that later on once your students get started on eSpark. So don't worry if you don't see it quite yet. We have these icons at the top that can help us interpret the report. So I would like to point out 2 important ones, which is the green star, that means students are earning high fives, and the yellow square, which means students are struggling. So that can help you identify students that you want to check in with. You'll also be able to see how students are responding to our mood check-in every day. So we can see that Violet felt proud today, and that's a really great way to be able to check in with students. And of course, you can use the filters at the top. So you can change the class, you can change the subject, the date, and you can switch from the scores report to the minutes report to see how much time students are spending on eSpark. So that's a quick summary for you of your activity report for tracking daily engagement. Next, we have the progress report. This is where you can track how your students are performing on specific standards throughout the year. It's a color-coded report, so it's really easy to look at. And all of this data comes from the adaptive learning path. So it's essentially showing you how your students are performing on skills when they're working independently at their own level and pace, and it will help you identify areas of need for your class. In your teacher dashboard, you'll find this right next to the activity report where it says track progress. A really cool feature in your progress report is that you can sort by specific skills and have students group together based on their performance. So, for example, if I click on count syllables, this is going to regroup the data for me based on students' performance. So I can see my lowest performing students at the top, my highest performing students at the bottom, and any students that haven't worked on the skill yet will be at the very bottom. And again, it's color coded for you to help you really get those clear visuals, to help you with small group planning and identifying those areas of need. The final report is the individual student report that each student has. This will give you a detailed history into everything that one student has worked on in eSpark this year. So it's a really great tool that can support parent-teacher conferences, IEP tracking or meetings, as well as generally diving deep into understanding how a student is performing on eSpark. This report does not have its own tab at the top of the dashboard. All you need to do to access this report is click on a student's name, and you can do that from the progress report or from the activity report. For example, I have a student named Ray who's been struggling a lot throughout this domain of standards. So I might want to click on Ray's name and see their individual report. I'll be able to see all the skills they've worked on this year with their scores, the dates assigned and completed. This is another place where you can view their student video recordings and quizzes as well. You can sort all of this data if you click on the different columns. So you can sort by score, by skill, by date to help you identify trends. You can also print this report for one student or for the whole class to save time. And if you ever need to adjust what a student is working on in their adaptive path, you can change their reading level or switch to math to change their math level. So those are the 3 data reports in eSpark. Next, the last thing we're going to talk about today is the weekly emails. The weekly emails will really save you some time by sharing some of your data trends. First, on Mondays, we send a small group suggestion email. This is going to recommend a group of students that have all been struggling on the same skill recently. This data comes from your progress report, and it's a really great way to do an on demand intervention for that group of students. We will even give a suggestion for what you could work on with those students if you did pull them for a small group. So it could be questions for you to go over with them or even a video that you could show them. Next, on Wednesdays, we send a high five email. This is a really exciting email that celebrates your students that are mastering skills on eSpark and earning those high fives. It will list all of your students that have earned a high five in the last week. We'll link their video and other great pieces of work that they've created recently. And we encourage you to celebrate those students with high five celebrations. We have high five certificates or tracker posters that you can find in our support feature by searching the keywords high five. So those are all of your data and progress monitoring tools in eSpark, and we hope you're excited to try them out. For your next steps, I would recommend that you spend some time exploring your teacher dashboard and thinking about your eSpark implementation. When will you use eSpark and how will you use it? Will you use the quests, the assignments feature, both? I encourage you to pause the video here to make a plan for your eSpark implementation this year. We'll wrap up with some final notes. I want to say thank you so much for your time today. I hope that you're excited to use eSpark this year. On my slide, you can see a QR code. If you scan that with your phone, it will take you to a post survey where you can give us feedback on this asynchronous training, and then you'll get a PD certificate in your email that says that you attended this asynchronous training. Thank you so much for your time again, and I wish you a great school year and happy eSparking.